Welcome to Live with Anton Gunn. I'm so excited about being here with you. Today is Wednesday, Wu-Tang Wednesday, 2 p.m. East Coast time, 11 a.m. Pacific. To everybody in the Central Mountain Time Zone and across the world, you know it's time to get in where you fit in. I'm excited about being with you today. I'm not in my home office today. I'm actually traveling. Just finished a 2-day engagement with a client, finishing up some work with them, helping them to focus on their culture. And I want to use that experience today to talk about the topic that I want to share with all of you. I want to ask a question, and this is a question that I'm not asking you, but it's a question that asked me. And the question is, how does culture influence behavior? Like we throw around the word culture. I know I throw around the word culture a whole lot because culture is everything. And so I wanted to unpack for you, how does culture influence behavior? Now, before I get to unpacking how culture influences the behavior, I want to unpack the word culture. Again, we throw it around a whole lot. I know I do. But the question is, what is culture? So I'm not going to take you back to the root word, the root Latin word of culture, because I want to stay in the present tense. I love the origin of words and where words come from, but I want to stay focused on what it actually means. So the root word of culture is cultura, and that's from the Latin, but it really means to care. That is the root context of the word culture, is care. So let me break it down to you in this way. What do you actually care about? Not as an individual, but what does your company care about? See, what your company cares about becomes your culture. So if you think about the values, if you think about the norms, if you think about the objects, if you think about the goals that you care about as an organization, those things make up your culture. So if you take any company, you can probably look at that company and tell what they care about. So if you think about McDonald's, I'm going to use McDonald's for an example. What are some of the things McDonald's cares about? You know, you can think about it. Yeah, you might say they care about hamburgers or they care about French fries. I'll tell you the number one thing that McDonald's cares about. They care about real estate. Why? Because everybody thinks McDonald's is a hamburger business. It's actually a real estate business. If you think about all of the locations where McDonald's exists in the world, there are probably more McDonald's in America and around the world than there is any other kind of food chain or any other kind of food business. So one of the things they care about is real estate. They want to find the best real estate to put their restaurant. There are probably a lot of other things that they care about. They care about systems and processes. What do I mean, systems and processes? There isn't a McDonald's in America or in the world that you can walk into that is not set up the exact same way. That the fries are always in the same location, or the fryers are always in the same location. The burgers are always in the same location. The frosting machine, the drink machine are always in the exact same location. They never change up no matter where they are. And if you look at other businesses, they built themselves the same way. So, what am I saying to you? I'm saying that what you care about is easily identifiable when you start to think about it. And let's translate this as it relates to your people. What do you care about when it comes to your people? Do you care about competency when you hire people in the organization? And yeah, before you immediately say, yes, we only care about competency, or we want to make sure that we have the most competent people. There's some companies who says, I don't care what your competency is. I care, can you do what I need you to do? And so if I need you to hammer this nail into this piece of wood, that doesn't take a PhD in order to be able to do that. That just takes a physical ability to be able to do the action that I need of putting this hammer into this nail. So again, that's a simple concept of saying, what do you care about as it relates to your people? There are other things that you want to know whether a company actually cares about and as it relates to their culture. So I'm going to unpack a few of those things. Do you care about paying people fairly? Do you care about equity in your salaries? That's something that some companies care about, and other companies have demonstrated they don't care about. Do you care about training your people? Do you provide professional development opportunities for people in your organization? Like, does everybody have a certain amount of money every year that they can put towards professional development? Can they go to a conference? Can they take some time off for learning and development? Do you care about your people getting better in their work? If you do, it should be evident in your culture that you care about it. It shouldn't be set aside just for one or two people to have access to training and development. It should be where everybody can get access to training and development. Do you care about professional development of your people? Another thing I want to ask, do you care about in your company? Do you care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, accessibility? Do you care about these things? Do you care about making sure that your workplace is diverse? And not just diverse on the front lines where you have the lowest level, easiest hired employees, but at the senior most rankings of your organization, do you have people who are racially gender diverse, who are neurodiverse, who have a different sexual orientation or gender identity? Do you have those at the top rung of your organization? If you don't, then you have a culture that is exclusive and not inclusive. Why do I say you have a culture that's exclusive and not inclusive? Because I'll tell you right now, anybody who's on the front lines or who's a starter employee, a brand new employee who literally is at the lowest rung of the organization, they're looking at the top to see, is there anybody who looks like me or is like me that's in leadership in this organization? And if they don't see them, your culture is sending a message that you can work here, but you're never going to stay here, because you're never going to be at the top of this organization. You're never going to achieve the pinnacle of success at this company. So again, I ask you, what does your culture show that you care about? Here's another one as it relates to your people. Do you care about fixing things when people break them? And what do I mean fixing things? Many times in the workplace, people get into disagreements. They have arguments sometimes, or they have massive disagreements, or projects sometimes fail. And people like to get blamed for when projects fail. And sometimes people who didn't cause the project to fail get blamed for the project failing. I know I've been in that situation before, but there's probably other people who've been in that situation. So when there's a wrong, when you get blamed for something that you didn't do or something that you didn't cause, how does your organization fix that situation? Do you give apologies in your organization? Do you understand the power of an apology? Some organizations make so many mistakes and they just move on to the next thing. They have a culture where they move on to the next thing. They never apologize. They think it's just a part of the job. It's just a part of the nature of the beast. I know when I worked in healthcare for many, many years, there's one thing that I was clear about, is that physicians never like to apologize. Now, I'm not saying all physicians are this way, but there's something about their training and their education, their concern about liability, their concern about being sued, that they don't apologize when they make a medical error or a medical mistake. Let me give you this quick example. Culture of an organization could be that the leaders are in charge, but they don't really run the show, that the doctors run the show. And because the doctors run the show, the doctors generate the most revenue because they see the most patients and they provide most of the care, even though the nurses really provide most of the care. But here's my point. A doctor makes a mistake and does surgery on the wrong finger of a patient and realizes that after fact that I was supposed to do surgery on the ring finger, but I did surgery on the middle finger. And it's a mistake. So after the event is over with, the patient learns, hey, you were supposed to do surgery on my ring finger, but you did it on my middle finger. And the physician doesn't apologize for the mistake. Well, there was some research that showed that literally that the reason why people filed medical malpractice lawsuits, the number one reason, is not because they were harmed or injured by the surgery. Yes, they were harmed and injured by the surgery. But the number one reason why they filed a medical malpractice lawsuit was because the physician refused to apologize. And some organizations have a culture where it's okay not to apologize for mistakes. So I'm telling you that if you really want to know what culture is, it is what you care about. And what you care about will influence the behavior of the people in the organization. Like I could be a person who really cares about apologizing. I could be a person who really cares about treating people right. I could be a person that values diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I can come inside of your culture that doesn't value any of those things. And over time, I will become more like you and less like how I was. That our environment influences how we think and how we act. Our environment is one in which we get shaped by. Yes, we also can shape our environment. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But what I want you to understand more than anything else is that culture influences behavior. That however the culture is structured, however the environment is structured, over time, people become more like the culture and the culture becomes less like them. These groups and norms and values and context of how we do things starts to influence our behavior. That if your culture is a culture where people don't say good morning, even though I might want to say good morning every morning, over time, because it's not reciprocated, because nobody ever tells me good morning, I'm going to develop the behavior where I'm not going to say good morning. Now, I know that sounds simple, but I'm telling you now that your culture influences behavior. Your culture shapes how people see each other, how people treat each other, how people understand each other. Your culture is everything. And the behaviors that people carry out in the workplace is because you have a culture of doing those things. Let me give you this one example. Several years back, the company Wells Fargo was hit with some litigation, or these massive stories came out about Wells Fargo, how they were creating fake accounts for many of their customers, many of those customers being minority customers, African Americans, Latinos, etc. They were creating fake accounts. Why? Because the employees would get bonuses and get rewarded if a customer opened multiple accounts or had multiple accounts. So there developed a culture inside the organization that even though it was unethical, even though it was wrong, even though this is what we should not be doing, that it was understood that if you wanted to be successful and as a part of this culture, you had to create those accounts. And so over time, it became, even though it was wrong, it became the status quo. It became what people did. And if you came into the organization, you repeated that culture. You weren't trained on it in orientation. You weren't told that this is what you should do. But when you got there, you saw what everybody else was doing. And when you saw what everybody else was doing, you started doing the same things. Again, your culture influences behavior. People started doing the wrong thing on a regular basis because that is what the culture laid out. So I'm telling you right now, as much as we like to resist it, as much as we don't want to believe it, your culture will shape your behavior. That when I played college football, we had a culture that it was offense versus defense, that we weren't one team, we were two different teams. It was offense versus defense. And so we developed a culture where some members on the offensive team didn't like members on the defensive team. And it wasn't just a practice when we were trying to get better to win a game. It translated off the field. It translated into the locker room. It translated into the dorm room. It translated into the cafeteria. I remember two of my teammates, one on offense, another on defense, got into a physical fist fight after we had dinner at the dining hall because they didn't like each other. Because our coaches created a culture and promoted a culture where it was us versus them. Now, I'm pretty sure if you think in your company, if you think about the people that you lead and you really look around, you can see there's some places Where the culture is us versus them. Your culture is influencing your behavior. Your culture will influence your team. So here's the three things I want to give you as I prepare to close. I want to give you three things to think about as it relates to your culture and how you can change the behavior. How you can change the behavior. I want to give you three things that you can think about how to begin to change the culture if your culture is not what you want it to be. The first thing you need to understand as it relates to changing your culture is that you permit what you promote. Now, what do I mean when I say you permit what you promote? What you allow to go on in your organization by default is what you promote to the world. If you allow bad behaviors to go on in your organization, that is what you promote to the world. If you allow people to come in the office and not speak to people in the morning, then you're putting out to the world that we're an organization who doesn't speak to people. If you create an environment where it's all about only the goals and the metrics, and it's not about building a team or building an environment where everybody feels valued, respected, and included, then you're going to promote to the world that all we care about is the bottom line. All we care about are the financial goals. All we care about are the revenue streams that are coming into the organization. All we care about is reducing costs. You permit what you promote. So my question for you is for you to write down all of the things that you believe that your company permits for its employees. Because if you can write down what you permit employees to do, then I'm telling you, that's what you promote. And so if you want to change your culture, you got to change what you permit because it becomes what you promote. The second thing I want you to understand is that you need to inspect what you expect. You need to inspect what you expect. So if you expect people to value diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you expect people to value internal promotions and developing your own people, you need to inspect what processes, procedures you have to ensure that you have diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, do you require that all slates for candidates include a diverse candidate? Do you require people to go to annual diversity, equity, and inclusion training? Do you create the space internally for people to learn more about the dimensions of diversity? Do you have goals to hire a certain percentage of your workforce to be veterans? You got to inspect what you expect. So if you expect diversity, you got to inspect what are the policies, practices, and procedures you have in place to ensure that diversity is an outcome. But if you just have a statement that says, we value diversity, but you never look at the data, you never inspect how you are achieving diversity, how are you maintaining diversity, then you have a culture that is not promoting diversity. So you got to inspect what you expect. Hope everybody understands that if you want something different for your team, for your leaders, you got to inspect what you expect. Now, here's the final point for you. I want you to understand this above all else, that when it comes to culture, influencing behavior, change starts with you. That's right. Change starts with you. And what I mean starts with you, you need to re-examine what you believe. You need to re-examine what you value. You need to re-examine how you think about the people inside your organization. Because what you believe will determine your behaviors. Your behaviors will determine your actions, and your actions will determine your outcomes. So if the outcome, what you want is a culture that's thriving because people value each other, because people respect each other, people are literally engaged and care about each other in the workplace, as the word culture, the root word of culture is care. If you want to have the outcome that everybody cares, it starts with, what do you believe about your people? What do you believe your culture should be? And once you get clear about your belief system, it's going to determine your behaviors. How do you behave as a leader? So if you want people to value diversity, what do you believe about diversity? What are your behaviors around diversity? Do you spend time with a homogenous group when you're in the workplace, or even when you're outside of the workplace? You got to change your beliefs and your behaviors, because those will shape your actions, what you do every day. Because the people in your organization will do what they see you to do. They will do what you do, not what you say. So you can say, we value diversity, we value people, we value an inclusive culture, we value all of these things. But what do you do as a leader? What are your actions? And so if you don't believe what you have on the paper, you won't behave like what's on the paper. That means you won't do the actions of what's on the paper, and you won't have the outcomes. So I hope this made sense to you. I want you to be clear that culture influence, drives, controls behavior. Culture controls behavior. It's clear as day. People will do what you do, and you will get what you inspect. And the top line, the first one that is clear as day, is that you permit what you promote. So if you want to change things, you got to change what you promote. You got to inspect what you expect, and you got to be the change you want to see in the world. And that's a quote I know is attributed to Gandhi, but I'm telling you right now, you have to believe differently, behave differently, and act differently if you want a culture where everybody thrives. And if this video has added any value to you, if this content has added any value to you, here's what I want you to do. I want you to download my Just Lead Toolkit. It'll give you some keys and some tools on how you can begin to operationalize improving your culture. You can go to antongunn.com/toolkit, antongunn.com/toolkit. Give me your email address. I'll give you the toolkit, and it will help you to begin to change your culture, to change the behavior that people have in the organization, because you focused on improving the culture. So I hope this makes sense. I'll see you next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, back in my home office, not on the road in a hotel, traveling. But I hope you got the message and you got what you need out of this. And I look forward to seeing you. Everybody have a fantastic day. Take care.